The first sight of the Haar Castle is an assault on the senses. Rising from the flat Utrecht countryside, its turrets, crenellations, and sweeping brick facades break the horizon with theatrical force. For most castles in the Netherlands, one expects modest moated keeps or half-ruined towers surviving as rural landmarks. De Haar is different. It appears as though transported from another world, a fantasy vision of medieval power reconstructed on a scale that dwarfs its surroundings. Even before crossing its drawbridge, one senses that De Haar is not merely a castle, but a stage, an aristocratic theater designed to project memory, lineage, and spectacle. Our tour begins not inside the walls but in the long avenue that leads toward the castle gate. Here, the visitor is choreographed into the experience. Trees frame the view, focusing the gaze toward turrets that rise above the moat. The smell of water mixes with earth and clipped grass. Birdsong competes with the distant hum of modern traffic, a reminder that the 20th century still lurks beyond this pastoral mise-en-scene. Yet as we move closer, it feels as though time thickens. We are not merely approaching a building, we are entering a palimpsest of memory, myth, and power. The complex of former stables and outbuildings is a crucial chapter in the narrative, the architecture of logistical support. While adhering to the overarching Neo-Gothic vocabulary, utility governed their layout, affirming their status as integral, albeit subordinate, parts of a luxury estate built to an elite standard. Today primarily functioning as museum, the coach house served as the hub for the movement and display of status. The carriage collections are presented as political symbols of mobility and status. A grand, liveried carriage arriving at the castle's gate provided an immediate, powerful assertion of the family's wealth and social rank. These outbuildings housed the specialized service personnel, the grooms, coachmen, and later, the chauffeurs, who managed the transport operation. Their dedicated quarters were necessarily modest and utilitarian, contrasting sharply with the aesthetic excess of the main guest rooms. They confirmed the essential, non-glamorous, yet highly organized human and mechanical infrastructure required, demonstrating that the ultimate illusion of effortless luxury was physically sustained by a robust, highly organized, and efficient machine of service and logistics located just beyond the main edifice. To understand De Haar, one must first recognize its paradox. This is a castle both ancient and modern, rooted in a 12th century feudal dynasty, yet reconstructed almost entirely at the turn of the 20th century. Its origins lie with the Van Zuylen family, among the oldest noble houses of the Low Countries, whose fortunes rose and fell with wars, marriages, and inheritances. Yet its present form owes everything to late 19th century wealth, the union of Etienne Gustav Frederick van Zuylen van Nijevelt and Baroness Helene de Rothschild. Their resources, coupled with the genius of architect Pierre Cuypers, produced a monumental revival of feudal architecture on a scale unmatched in the Netherlands. The restoration of Kasteel De Haar is best understood as a profound act of restoration as invention. Architect Cuypers did not merely rebuild a ruin. He created a coherent, theatrical sequence of spaces that simultaneously affirmed the ancient lineage of the Van Zuylens and demonstrated the global power and modern comfort afforded by the Rothschild fortune. The castle's interior architecture is an enduring narrative of the stage, a primary document of late 19th century aristocratic identity where history, wealth, and performance are seamlessly fused. Cuypers' design immediately asserts authority through architectural elements of grandeur, using sheer scale, heavy materials, and vertical emphasis to create a sense of overwhelming, timeless authority. The initial experience of Kasteel De Haar is intentionally designed to be overwhelming, immediately establishing the family's elevated status and historical right to the space. The path to the castle is controlled by structures of exclusion and status. Bronze and wrought iron gates, found both at the exterior and within the interior courtyards, function as symbolic and physical barriers that dictate the pace and route of the visitor's experience, providing an initial visual statement of control and exclusivity. The massive oak entrance doors provide the initial, imposing physical and symbolic barrier to the interior. Their scale and craftsmanship are designed to convey solidity, permanence, and wealth. While largely symbolic today, the castle's original drawbridge mechanism, with its visible chains, wheels, and levers, is a critical piece of medieval symbolism. It directly connects the modern restored castle to its feudal past as a defensive stronghold, performing the narrative of a fortress redeemed. To complete the external claim to dominion, the castle's weather vane is positioned at the highest point of the tower. This metal ornament visually claims the highest physical point of the domain, symbolizing the family's dominion over the estate and the surrounding lands. As we cross the drawbridge, it is worth recalling the paradox of historical imagination. De Haar appears medieval, yet much of what we see is younger than the Eiffel Tower. This is not a deception but a deliberate choice, the castle as an aristocratic self-portrait, a stone epic weaving medieval lineage with modern capital. With that in mind, let us step through its gates and walk through centuries of history staged in brick, glass, and garden. Inside the hall, the visitor is greeted by coats of arms, swords, and tapestries. Heraldic symbols blaze from walls and stained glass, each escutcheon whispering of alliances and feudal ties. This is where the story of the Van Zuylens begins. Around the year 1100, Stephen I Van Zuylen established himself as Lord of Zuylen, near Utrecht. His family belonged to the ancient nobility whose prestige rested on medieval service to princes and bishops rather than later ennoblement. In a world dominated by water, land reclamation, and territorial disputes, the Van Zuylens' power lay in managing dikes, rivers, and fertile polders. Aristocracy in the Low Countries was not just about military prowess but also about technological mastery of nature. A noble family's legitimacy was written not only in charters but in canals. The main hall, or central hall, functions as the absolute ceremonial core of Kuiper's architectural composition. Upon entering, the visitor is confronted by an interior that reads like an ecclesiastical nave adapted for secular display. This space is dominated by an upward-thrusting verticality, reinforced by Neo-Gothic ribs and monumental fireplaces that draw the eye toward the ceiling. The aesthetic choice is deliberate. The main hall is designed to literally overwhelm the senses and to frame the processional movement of guests from arrival to the staterooms. De Haar itself first enters the record in the mid-14th century, when the Van Zuylens built a fortified keep at Haar Zuylens. The choice of location was strategic. Perched on slightly higher ground amid the rivers and peatlands of Utrecht, it commanded local routes and offered control over surrounding farmland. Like many medieval castles, it was less a romantic fortress than a practical symbol of feudal jurisdiction. The principal artifacts here are not mere decorations but crucial instruments in the staging of lineage. The vast expanses of heraldic stained glass concentrated throughout the halls serve as a constant visual reminder of the family's ancient name and alliances. They illuminate the space with colors that simultaneously reference the Catholic Gothic imagery favored by Kuipers and the specific coats of arms of the Van Zuylens. These features, alongside carved mantelpieces and large tapestry hangings, function as a concentrated form of rhetoric, providing visual legitimacy to the family's occupation and restoration of the seat. The main hall thus serves as the central node, connecting the points of arrival and reception to the subsequent staterooms, defining the narrative route through the aristocratic domain. The 15th century brought turbulence. The Hook and Cod Wars, dynastic struggles between factions supporting the Counts of Holland, tore through the region. The Van Zuylens, allied with the Hooks, suffered setbacks. Their possession, Slot Zuylen, was destroyed in 1422 during these conflicts, symbolizing both the fragility of noble power and the brutality of political rivalry. Yet feudal resilience lay in marriage. Through careful alliances, the Van Zuylens merged with the De Haar branch, consolidating titles and ensuring survival. Standing in the hall today, the visitor can sense how heraldry condenses centuries of struggle. Each crest is a legal claim, a reminder that while castles could burn, entitlements endured. Feudalism in the Low Countries was not just military but juridical, the right to hold land, levy dues, and sit among peers in regional estates. For the Van Zuylens, continuity meant adapting, sometimes losing a fortress, but never surrendering their name. We pass into the library, lined with dark wood and filled with volumes in multiple languages. This is the intellectual heart of the castle, and an apt place to recall its centuries of ruin. The library offers an intimate, visually heavy contrast to the public grandeur, serving as the family's learned Neo-Gothic cabinet. It is a compact, wood-lined, richly carved room designed to display collections and signal cultivated taste and scholarly depth. Baron Etienne's collection of books, leather-bound volumes on history, literature, and theology, confirms the family's commitment to cultivated, scholarly pursuits, distinguishing them from mere nouveau riches. The cultural apex of the room is the central Riexac altarpiece panel, a highlight of the Baron and Baroness's devotional and collecting practice. This fragment, from a late Gothic Valencian altarpiece by Joan Riexac, functions as both a religious object and a mark of connoisseurship. Its presence aligns the Van Zuylen Rothschild identity not just with Dutch history, but with a broader, pan-European, elite cultural and artistic appreciation. From the 16th century onward, De Haar fell into decline. The Dutch revolt reconfigured loyalties, Protestantism gained dominance, while Catholic nobles like the Van Zuylens often found themselves on the margins. Yet even as their castle deteriorated, the family retained their legal nobility. In Dutch law, noble status was tied to title and lineage, not necessarily to wealth or estates. Thus, even as the castle became a ruin overgrown with ivy, the family maintained precedence in heraldic registers and aristocratic circles. By the 18th century, travelers described De Haar as picturesque debris, its moat choked with weeds and its towers collapsing. In the Age of Enlightenment, when ruined abbeys and castles became objects of romantic fascination, De Haar symbolized both nostalgia and neglect. Aristocratic families across Europe faced similar fates, declining revenues, shifting economies, and the rise of bourgeois wealth undermined their ability to maintain ancestral seats. Yet the Van Zuylens endured. Their titles were never extinguished. This resilience illustrates a broader principle. In aristocracy, survival often meant legal continuity over material presence. Ruins could be rebuilt, names, once extinguished, could not. Thus the family waited, preserving its identity through heraldry, alliances, and memory, until fortune returned in the 19th century. Transitioning from the overwhelming ceremony of the main hall, the Knight's Hall introduces the concept of the castle as a domestic living space, while retaining the gravitas of feudal tradition. The Knight's Hall replicates the medieval Great Hall aesthetic, characterized by pointed arches, wide hearths, and long sightlines. Kuiper's design here intentionally evokes the legal and ceremonial Knight's Hall traditions found across the Low Countries, but reframes it as a domestic living/banqueting space. The room is replete with large carved woodwork, family coats of arms, and tapestries. The monumental heraldic fireplace is a primary carrier of the castle's rhetoric. By prominently displaying the Van Zuylen coat of arms, it constantly reinforces the feudal identity and ancient legitimacy of the family within the domestic gathering space. Notably, the armory display is explicitly more decorative than functional. This distinction is critical. The room does not need to defend against attack, it needs to defend the family's social position. The Knight's Hall thus functions as the castle's public living room. A place that theatricalizes feudal identity for intimate, modern aristocratic audiences, demonstrating a continuous, unbroken link to the medieval past despite the centuries of ruin. Our path now leads into the dining hall, with its soaring ceilings and glittering chandeliers. Here, one can imagine the fateful dinner parties of the 19th century, when aristocratic survival merged with financial power. The dining room translates the formal ceremony of the hall into the material culture of hospitality. Although richly ornamented in Kuiper's Neo-Gothic idiom, the room's function and furnishing align it with the Belle Époque formal dining salon. This space is defined by heavy drapery, gilding, and the long banqueting table. It is here that the material performance of social ranking was executed most precisely. The room's artifacts, the family's extensive service silver, Sèvres and other important porcelain services, and grand tapestries, were the showpieces. The display was enhanced by integrated modern service features hidden behind historicist facades, a signature technique of Kuiper's, allowing for seamless, efficient modern service without disrupting the medieval illusion. The dining room is therefore the perfect expression of the castle's core thesis, a luxurious modern lifestyle cloaked in the aesthetic authority of the past. In 1887, Etienne van Zuylen married Baroness Helene de Rothschild of the Parisian branch of the famous banking family. It was a union of necessity and opportunity. For the Van Zuylens, the Rothschild dowry offered salvation, the means to resurrect the Haar and restore aristocratic grandeur. For the Rothschilds, the marriage offered integration into Europe's oldest nobility, a legitimizing alliance that anchored their financial dynasty within ancient lineage. This was not mere romance but the political economy of marriage. Across Europe, aristocratic families married heiresses from wealthy bourgeois dynasties to replenish fortunes. Yet few unions were as symbolic as that of Van Zuylen and Rothschild, Catholic Dutch nobility meeting Jewish banking power, feudal memory entwined with modern capital. The Balzac/ballroom represents the physical and symbolic climax of the public domain. Following the same stringent Neo-Gothic vocabulary of high vaulted ceilings and decorative woodwork, this room is defined by a theatrical sense of verticality appropriate for formal assembly and dancing. It was designed to maintain the grand, historical aura of a medieval banquet space while fulfilling the function of a modern reception hall essential for the Rothschild-era social calendar. The interpretive significance of the Balzac hinges entirely on its principal artifact, the Japanese lacquered sedan chair. This striking, 18th century, high-status litter, acquired from Kobe and reportedly bearing a Tokugawa-style device, was historically placed with honor centrally in the room. The presence of such an exotic, high-status object in the core European Neo-Gothic space performs transnational collecting as aristocratic theater. It is a powerful visual statement that the family's reach and taste extend far beyond the narrow geopolitical confines of the Netherlands or even Europe. Its intended location dictates the room's overarching interpretive note: the castle is not just old, it is globally informed and infinitely rich. While its presence is occasionally interrupted by necessary conservation, the Norman has been subject to recent dismantling and conservation in the castle's restoration studio. Its significance remains paramount. We enter the entrance hall again, now from the balcony, where marble, carved wood, and stained glass combine in overwhelming display. Every surface proclaims prestige. This is the world of Pierre Kuiper's 1827–1921, the architect who also designed Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum and Central Station. At De Haar, freed from budgetary constraints, Kuipers created his magnum opus, a castle that was both authentic ruin and imaginative fantasy. Kuiper's philosophy was rooted in the Gothic revival, but with a Catholic twist. He believed architecture should not merely imitate medieval forms but embody their spiritual and social ideals. At De Haar, he fused archaeology with invention. Some medieval foundations were preserved, yet much of the design was newly imagined. Turrets soared higher than any medieval precedent, interiors blended medieval motifs with modern comfort. Electricity, heating, and plumbing were concealed within Neo-Gothic forms, turning medievalism into modern luxury. The approach to these private areas is mediated by the gallery/first-floor corridor. As a long gallery corridor for portraiture and display, it functions as a visual transition space. The high walls bearing the portraits of the Van Zuylen family, decorative cabinets, and showcases ensure that even the transit between rooms maintains the historical narrative. Kuiper's planning made these corridors integral to the narrative route, with the portraits functioning as an ancestry chain and continuous visual claim to lineage. The gilded picture frames housing these portraits further underscore the high status accorded to this family history. The private chambers on the upper floors demonstrate a critical shift. The rigid, corporate Neo-Gothic narrative begins to bend toward eclectic, personalized interiors, reflecting individual tastes and the intimate dynamics of the family. The separate principal bedrooms for the Baron and Baroness are studies in design duality, reflecting the aristocratic norm of the period. The Baron's bedroom is typically styled with stronger, darker tones and heavier Neo-Gothic furniture, codifying the male status and the role of the host. The Baroness's bedroom, conversely, adopted distinctive pink tones, more delicate decorative touches, and lighter, often French/Empire-influenced styles, reflecting her individual taste and the gendered expectations of a boudoir. The pink room embodies the ultimate tension between Kuiper's architectural dogma and the Baroness Helene's powerful, cosmopolitan taste. This room, described as really a pleasant little apartment in itself, became the physical manifestation of a profound architectural disagreement. Baroness Helene commissioned a separate architect to design her room in lighter tones, asserting her patronage over Kuiper's uncompromising Neo-Gothic vision. The unique solution involved the room being constructed with two doors, ensuring that the starkly contrasting styles of the two architects would not be visible to each other or to visitors moving along the principal corridors. This structural compromise physically encoded the Baroness's domestic authority over the architect's vision. Furthermore, its bathroom featured a bathtub sunk into the floor, strategically placed to offer the Baroness a panoramic view of the castle grounds while bathing. Brilliantly combining luxury with advanced plumbing technologies and ultimate privacy, a clear statement of fin de siècle modernity concealed within Gothic walls. Scholars describe De Haar as a Gesamtkunstwerk, a total work of art in which architecture, furniture, and landscape combined to create a unified performance. Every brick was part of a script, to convince visitors that they were entering not a pastiche but a living tradition. The effect is theatrical, even cinematic. One moves through spaces as if through scenes, each carefully composed to evoke awe. In this sense, Kuiper's De Haar is not a reconstruction but a stage set for aristocratic identity. It proclaims, the Van Zuylens have returned, their lineage embodied in a castle more magnificent than ever. We pass into salons and bedrooms. Here the 20th century intrudes, not in architecture but in stories. For every visitor in September, De Haar became a stage of society. From the 1920s onward, the Van Zuylen Rothschilds hosted an annual, September tradition. For 1 month each year, the family gathered at De Haar and filled it with guests from the worlds of fashion, cinema, art, and aristocracy. Celebrities paraded through its halls: Coco Chanel, Gregory Peck, Maria Callas, Brigitte Bardot, Roger Moore, Yves Saint Laurent, Jean Cocteau. Each guest added a layer of myth, turning the castle into a salon of European and global culture. These anecdotes are more than gossip, they reveal how aristocracy adapted to modernity. No longer commanding armies or estates, noble families preserved relevance through soft power, hospitality, spectacle, and cultural patronage. The guest list at the Haar was a network avant la lettre, weaving together artists, actors, and designers in webs of influence. Chanel brought fashion, Callas voice, more cinema, each was absorbed into the aristocratic aura of the Haar, and in turn burnished its prestige. Sociologically, this tradition reveals the shift from feudal to cultural capital. Where medieval lords wielded swords, modern nobles wielded celebrity. The Haar became a theater not of war but of glamour, staging the aristocracy's continued centrality in an age of democracy and media. The castle's seamless performance of elite hospitality was underpinned by an invisible infrastructure. The final sequence of the tour must analyze these functional spaces crucial for social history, revealing the logistical labor and the class structure that made the opulence possible. The kitchens and service rooms represent a necessary shift to industrially scaled but meticulously crafted pragmatism. While functionally pragmatic, serving a massive household, they were still constructed with high-quality materials, large brick/concrete ranges, decorative kitchen tiles, and vast copper pans. The service corridors were designed for the discreet and efficient movement of staff. These rooms demonstrate the immense logistical effort and labor required to produce the effortless spectacle enjoyed above. Hidden rooms and servants' quarters on the attic and third floor constitute the architectural realization of the social hierarchy. These areas consist of simple, compact, dormitory-style rooms with exposed roof timbers and smaller fenestration, starkly contrasting with the ornamentation below. The complex system of bell systems and mechanisms and service routes confirms the highly managed environment. The artifacts here, staff furniture, laundry implements, trunks, are the material culture of the invisible workforce. The castle's modernity is underscored by its amenities. The existence of approximately 30 bathrooms in total, many featuring pioneering sanitary systems and high-quality fixtures, signaling the high standards of comfort expected by the aristocracy of the era. Finally, the link between the historic architecture and the lived reality of the 20th century is cemented by family photographs. These images documenting the family's life and celebrity guests are vital for understanding the castle's social history. Through the French doors, we step into the gardens. Formal parterres stretch in symmetry, roses bloom in labyrinthine design, deer wander in parkland. Here, landscape itself becomes a performance. The reconstruction of the Haar required drastic measures. The medieval village of Zuylen, long settled around the ruins, was demolished and rebuilt a kilometer away. This act reveals the aristocratic paradox: philanthropy for some, displacement for others. The villagers were rehoused in neat brick cottages, designed in a model village style that reflected paternalistic ideals of order and hygiene. Yet the old site was cleared not for their benefit but to create the aristocratic utopia of the Haar's gardens and deer parks. Thus, the castle was reborn through sacrifice. Where once a medieval village stood, there now spread ornamental landscapes. This pattern, aristocratic renewal at the expense of local community, was repeated across Europe, from English estates to French chateaux. At the Haar, it was performed with particular theatricality. The family erased a living village to inscribe their own memory in stone and garden. The gardens were designed to complement Kuiper's castle, blending French formality with English romanticism. The rose labyrinth symbolized both medieval chivalry and Rothschild taste. Parterres displayed floral wealth as aristocratic abundance. The deer park echoed medieval hunting grounds, linking modern aristocrats with their feudal ancestors. Yet the gardens also conceal absence. Where they now spread once stood the village of Zuylen, its demolition a precondition of this aristocratic Eden. Thus the gardens symbolize both beauty and erasure, the utopia of the few built upon the displacement of the many. Comparisons can be drawn to Versailles, where Louis XIV displaced villages to create his royal park, or to English estates like Stowe, where aristocrats reshaped entire landscapes. At de Haar, the same dynamic unfolded in miniature, heritage for some, loss for others. The chapel stands as a crucial architectural and historical anchor, providing the necessary religious and feudal context for the immense secular performance of the main castle. Unlike the main structure, the chapel is rooted in genuine, ancient fabric, embodying the persistence of the Van Zuylen name. The origins of the chapel are documented to approximately 1420. Crucially, the chapel's tower still contains building remains of these earlier structures, acting as a physical, tangible link to the true feudal past. The chapel's survival underscored the enduring importance of the Catholic faith to the Van Zuylen dynasty, making it an essential religious and ancestral touchstone. When restoration began, Kuipers undertook the delicate task of consolidating the remains of the chapel and its tower before initiating the main castle's construction. This sequenced approach was a deliberate act of architectural redaction. Kuipers stabilized the authentic ruin, ensuring its survival, and then designed the new structure to harmonize with this original historical artifact. This treatment allowed the family to claim architectural continuity and religious legitimacy. The chapel is essential to the castle's overall narrative. It provides the historical gravitas that legitimizes the Rothschilds' glamour. The chapel's religious icons and smaller, devotional stained glass windows focus the space on faith, underscoring the family's enduring commitment to Catholicism. Today, the restored chapel is both a historical exhibit and a functioning space, seating up to 110 people. Its modern function as a venue for continuity, confirmed by the current seating arrangement, links the original feudal patrons of the 15th century to the social and familial rites of the modern era, ensuring it remains a living, functional symbol of heritage. We circle back into the castle, now aware of its layers: medieval origin, early modern ruin, 19th century resurrection, 20th century spectacle. Today, de Haar is owned by a foundation, its halls open to tourists, its gardens to the public. The September tradition has ended, replaced by heritage festivals and guided tours. This transformation raises questions of heritage politics. Who owns aristocratic memory? How should displacement be remembered? De Haar embodies paradox, a monument of feudal lineage built with bourgeois wealth, sustained today by democratic tourism. Its myth persists not because it is authentic, but because it performs authenticity so effectively. For scholars, de Haar is a case study in the reinvention of aristocracy. It shows how lineage can survive ruin, how modern capital can resurrect feudal symbols, and how architecture can stage memory across centuries. It is not merely a castle but a performance of identity, at once medieval, modern, and timeless. As we leave the castle and cross the drawbridge once more, the moat reflects turrets against the sky. Behind us lies not just a building but 1,000 years of history compressed into stone and story. De Haar is a paradox, a ruin reborn, a village sacrificed, a salon of aristocracy, a museum of memory. Its walls narrate the survival of the Van Zuylens, the wealth of the Rothschilds, the vision of Kuipers, and the glamour of the 20th century. Like a theater between acts, it waits for each visitor to supply the next performance. For in walking its halls, we too become part of its story, audience and actors in the living stage of de Haar. Thank you for joining me on this journey into our shared past. If today's episode sparked your curiosity about where we come from and where we're going, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Search for Origin. Here, history, faith, and science come together to reveal the deeper stories that shaped our world. And if you're ready to walk in the footsteps of the past yourself, I now offer exclusive museum and city tours in the Netherlands and Germany. Discover the hidden layers of art, culture, and faith with a personal guide who speaks your language and knows the ground you're walking on. To book a tour or ask questions, reach out at dukes@tonline.de, that is DJOEKS@tonline.de, or look at the information in the channel's description. Your origin story is waiting. See you all in the next episode.